Hi, my name is Daniel Odio. I'm the owner of DROdio Real Estate Inc. Here's a picture of me so you know who's talking to you. So today I'm going to show you how to make a successful lowball offer, which is much different from how most people buy houses. Most people, the vast majority of our clients, purchase based on emotion instead of focusing on price. So that's fine, and I'll tell you the differences between the two, but if you really want to focus on price, here's how to do it. First of all, a little bit about us. We've been in business since 2003, featured in all sorts of publications for our use of technology. Picture from the Wall Street Journal here. And the progressive use of technology that these publications have referred to, I'm going to show you some of that today, and you can see how we apply it. So the first thing is to let you know what we're going to be talking about, how to write a lowball offer because it's much different than a traditional offer. I'll tell you more about that. What to expect. Sellers do not respond positively necessarily to you putting lowball offers in, but that should not stop you from trying. And you have to have no shame in this. And I don't have any shame doing it at all because you're bringing a lot of money to the table. And just because the seller has not realigned his expectations to the reality of the marketplace, that's not your problem. You have plenty of houses to choose from right now. And then also how to close the deal. We'll talk about that. So the main thing is that you commit to buying on price. If you want to make lowball offers and if you want to do it logically and not emotionally, you need to make a commitment up front to do it that way. I'll tell you, most people break that commitment because what happens is you find a house that you absolutely love and you got to have that house. And believe me, it makes my job a lot easier when you find a house that you want to buy, but it severely harms your negotiating position. And I'm willing to go to the mat for you. I'll make as many offers as you need to make, but you need to have the commitment to do it and to follow this process in order to be able to do it successfully. If you find a house you absolutely love, don't feel guilty. That's great. Sometimes people don't, so if you do, then go for it. We'll try to get you the best deal we can. But if you can walk away from a transaction because you're not getting the absolute best price, then you should, as long as you haven't fallen in love with the house. So, finding three houses to make an offer on. This is the first step, is to do your research, and our firm is set up in a way to maximize your ability to do research on your own. And I'll show you what I mean. If you go to our site, which is DROdio.com, DROdio.com, you'll see that we have tools like Bird's Eye Search, the best home search ever, listing notice, and I have complete video tutorials dedicated to showing you how to use these tools. So I'm not going to get too into the details now, but I'll just tell you briefly about each of them. Bird's Eye Search allows you to search the MLS with a Google Map interface. We search the entire MLS, which is currently 81,000 properties. You can see up here. And you can search, right now this is a search for Arlington, so you'll see that it's only pulling up Arlington based properties, and you can click on little thumbtacks and it'll show you each house and what it looks like with a picture for each, that sort of thing. So that's Bird's Eye Search. We have another tool called the Best Home Search Ever. What we think makes it the best home search ever are a couple things. One, you can search by properties close to metro. You can see that this is searching also the entire MLS with 81,000 homes. Now, there's a checkbox that realtors can check when they're listing a property to show properties that are within 1 mile of a metro station. But most real estate agents do not know that exists. So you can see that out of 81,000, about 1,100 have checked that box. But here's a trick, and we're the only site that lets you do this. You can also search listings that have the word metro in the description, because what realtors will do a lot of times is they'll put in the description close to metro or walk to metro. So you can see that by including homes that have the word metro in the description, you're almost quadrupling the number of houses that are available to you. So that's one neat thing, is that we search the listing notes. Nobody else does that. We can also search the listing notes for specific words. So if you want a house that has a deck, for example, we can search for the word deck, and then you can see out of those 4,000 homes that are close to metro, we're going to be able to see exactly 778 of those homes also have a deck. So that's very powerful, very useful. There's a lot more to this site, so check out the video tutorial. And in order to get to those video tutorials, what you do is on the DROdio website, you click on the buyer's link, and then here is a link for watching our video tutorials. So that's how you do it. The last tool that I'll show you now is Listing Notice. Listing Notice is a tool that checks the MLS for you once an hour to see if any properties that match your criteria have come on. So all you do is you submit an inquiry here, and whenever a property comes on the MLS, we send it to you via email along with the address. Very, very useful, especially when you combine it with our free GPS loaner, DROdio.com/GPS, which is a free loaner that we give out to people. You're welcome to use it, drive yourself around, find properties that you like. We're happy to open properties up for you as well. So if you find maybe 3, 4, 5 properties that you think you want to see, give us a call and we'll open the properties up for you. So let's get back to, and here's the GPS page. Let's get back to the next step. So here are some of the sites that I mentioned. Bird's Eye Search, the best home search ever, Listing Notice. So the first thing, let's say that you come to us and you say, we've found 3 houses that we think we like, or maybe we've been driving you around and we've identified a couple houses that you like. The first thing that I do is I call the listing agent and I say, my buyer likes your home, but he has several other houses that he's interested in. He'd like to know how flexible the sellers are. Now, just about every single seller out there, every single listing agent out there is going to say, just tell your clients to make an offer. And that's smart because that's how they're used to doing business. They just, they don't want to reveal the seller's intention, so they say, just bring me an offer. Well, I take it a step further. I say to them, this buyer has 3 homes that he likes, and he's going to make his first offer on whichever property the seller is most flexible on regarding price. So please go talk to your seller and ask them how flexible they are. That little bit of information right there is something that many realtors don't do. But it's critical for making lowball offers because our goal is not necessarily to find the perfect house because we have 3 that we like. Our goal is to figure out which seller is willing to go down the most in price. So about 80% of the time, the agent will come back and they'll say, well, the seller is willing to go down to this. If it's listed for 600K, the listing agent might come back and say the seller is willing to go back down to 580 or whatever the case might be. So effectively, I've gotten the seller to negotiate with himself before I've even started doing anything. So we're already starting at a much lower basis, in the case of my example, about 3% lower than the original list price. So that's the first step. Now, the next thing that I do is I try to figure out how much you should offer. There's a couple components to that. One of the things is, what did the seller pay for the property? Now, a lot of buyers mistakenly think that if a seller paid $200,000 for a house and he's selling it for $600,000, that seller should be willing to sell it for less because he paid less. But that doesn't make any sense. That's like saying that we're in a market for a car, and just because that car is an older car, it should sell for much less. What dictates the price are the current market conditions, not what the seller paid. Even if the seller's had it in their possession for 50 years, that doesn't mean they're just going to sell it for less because they didn't pay as much. But the reason it does matter is if the seller didn't pay a lot less for it, they may not be able to afford to sell it to you for under the asking price. Sellers are very reluctant to come to the closing table with cash. They're used to making money on a property, not losing money on a property. I did just have a seller come with $50,000 of cash to the table because I negotiated a very strong deal for my buyer, but a lot of sellers just don't have the means to do that. So if we can tell what they paid for it, which I'm able to find that, right off the bat we can tell how flexible is the seller going to be able to be in terms of the price. Also, how many days has the property been on the market? Properties that have been on for 100 or 200 days usually are going to be much more flexible than properties that just went on the market. Another way that you can tell is how much has it dropped from the original price. And these are all things that as a realtor I have access to. So I can see how many days it's been on. I can see if the property was listed for $700,000 and then it was dropped a month ago to $650 and now it just dropped to $600. I can see those things. Last thing, a vacant property is always better for lowball offers than a property that's not vacant. Paying 2 mortgage payments is especially painful for sellers. So finding vacant properties usually means the seller's moved on and they really want to sell. Now, when you find a property that we want to make an offer on, once I've had that conversation with 3 listing agents and I've found out which seller is the most flexible, you really have to be decisive and you have to move fast. And here's why. Once we make an offer, if that listing agent is any good, that listing agent is going to call every single person who's been through the property and try to get them to write a competing offer. And they're going to try to make it so that we don't have the kind of bargaining power that we would have if we were the only offer. So what I always do is I always put an expiration date on the offer, which is usually about 2 or 3 days. A lot of realtors forget to do this, and they don't realize that the standard contract, the regional sales contract in our area, does not have an expiration. So if you make an offer, technically it's valid until you withdraw it. Now, obviously, if a seller tried to accept an offer a month later, if it went to court, a judge would say it's not reasonable to expect that the offer is still valid after a month. But technically, until you withdraw that offer, it's still valid unless you put an expiration date on it, which is what I do. That expiration date requires the seller to make a decision quickly. Also, make the other point strong. You don't know how many buyers I have that want to make a lowball offer, but then they want to get the seller to include a sprinkler system or some other random item with the property. If you're going to focus on price, just focus on price. Put in a very strong earnest money deposit. I would suggest something that's 3, 4, 5, 6% of the price as an earnest money deposit. So on a $600,000 house, put $20,000 of earnest money if you can. And if you don't know what earnest money is, give me a call and I'll explain it to you. But it's basically the money that you're putting up to show that you're serious about the house. It does get credited to you at closing towards all the other closing costs. So you're not losing that money. The only way that you would lose that if you is if you default on the deal and you and the seller agree that the seller is going to take it. So make your other points strong. Fast closing. You can include a home inspection. They're very standard these days, but make it short, something like 7 days. So these are all terms that I would write up for you. And again, don't get attached to a specific property. When the seller counters, and here's where most people get tripped up. When the seller counters, move on to the next property. Don't counter back. Unless the seller's counter is so aggressive and you like the property and you're willing to go up, the best thing to do is to say that you're just going to move on. And then what that gives me the ability to do is to tell the listing agent, and I've done this plenty, when the seller comes back with a counter, I say to the listing agent, my buyer is not going to counter back. So please go back to your seller and see if that really truly is their best price, because my buyer is just going to move on. And about 50% of the time, the listing agent will come back with a better counter. And you should just move on. If they don't accept your lowball price, move on to all 3 and see if anybody else will. And then at least you have 3 counters in front of you. When the seller counters, they are the one that has the responsibility of honoring the counter. Once the seller counters your contract, you have the freedom to move on. And what I mean by that is when you make an offer, you can't make 3 offers on 3 different properties at the same time, because unless you want to buy all 3 potentially, you are on the hook to, if all 3 sellers were to accept those offers, you would be on the hook for 3 properties. But once the seller counters your offer, it's the sellers that are on the hook, and until they, in writing, withdraw that counter, it's technically valid. So if you make an offer and the seller counters, we can make another offer later that night and see if we can get a better deal from the next seller. And if that seller counters as well, we can go on to a third one, and then you have 3 counters in front of you, and then you can decide what you want to do. So let me tell you a little bit about why most brokers don't like lowball offers, but sellers often don't mind. I mean, obviously, sellers are in the mode right now. The stage of the market is that such that sellers are having to readjust their expectations. 2 years ago, sellers were used to walking away with a lot of money, and now a lot of them are walking away even. Some, like I said, are even losing money. But when a house has been on the market for 200 days, that seller is happy to look at anything. So don't have any shame about putting a lowball offer in. Believe me, I don't. This is what I do for a living. I'm happy to put as many lowball offers in as you want. And because of our use of technology, where you're doing a lot of the searching, at least the initial searching, and then I'm opening houses up that you like, it's a very efficient process. So we're able to move very quickly through these different options. Let me show you an example of an email with an agent. And this is where I said I was able to convince the buyer to come back to try back one more time on your listing. I've attached the counter offer. 560 is as high as he will go. He's made it very clear to me that he has plenty of other options available to make other offers on, and especially since this is the first one he's making an offer on, he wants to see what some other sellers say on other properties before he goes any higher on the price. So this is an example where the house was listed at around 600 and we went to 550. The listing agent came back and said that the seller would not go any lower than something like 580, and I said, look, he'll go up to 560, but that's it. Okay. Let me also show you another example here. So I'll just show you here a sample contract, and I've whited out, the names of the and the address of the specific property. But you can see that it started the property started at 600K, and the buyer offered 555, and then the sellers came back at 579, and the buyer came back at 560, and then the sellers came back at 574 with a 1% credit, so basically 568,000. So in this example, the buyers got a property that was valued at $600,000 for 568,000. It's a very good deal. So to tell you a little bit about how to contact us, my name is Daniel Odio. I'm the owner. 1-877-437-6346 is my number. You can email me anytime. You can also call me anytime. And we're happy to show you a little bit more about how we do this and do it for you. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you.